it turns out that history is actually quite relevant sometimes in web tech. You go back and you find out, well, it's because somebody made this decision
Yeah.
in a lab or whatever in the late 1900s or the early 2000s, and that's still there. That's still what we do. And once you understand that, you can see where some of those decisions came from, then you know why and how to change things.
CSS is emotional. This phrase came to me randomly one afternoon when I was trying to explain CSS to someone at the office. And it was very unexpected. It just hit me like a truth that has been there always, waiting for someone to say it. And what was an explanation of styles and selectors immediately became something more. It became a realization that CSS is more than just code. That CSS is about expression, is about nuances, and CSS is very personal. Months later, in November of 2024, that moment became a seed that grew into a blog series where I explored the depth and, of course, the emotions behind CSS. Then something happened. Around that time, CSS got a new logo, and with the new logo came a color that was tied to a story that's so deeply human that it sent chills down my spine. So I reached out to Eric Meyer, who is one of the founding fathers of CSS and actually very central to this story. What followed was a conversation I would never forget in my life. This video is a piece of that moment, and it is emotional, it is educational, it is inspirational, and I promise you, after seeing this video, you will never look at CSS the same way again. Speaking from the time of college and everything, you actually studied history in school. You had a BA in history, and yep. I guess I'm already curious, history, CSS, history tech, how, can you let us know?
Yeah, so I went to college actually to be a physicist, and after a year realized that physics was fun, but not what I wanted to do as a career. So I bopped around a number of programs and ended up with a history degree. I've always been very interested in history and studying history to see, because I feel like knowing where we've been can help us figure out where to go next.
Yeah.
But the tech part is that, so I clarified that I've been doing web tech since 1993 because I've been doing computer tech since about 1977. I was young, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but I was young when I was first exposed to computers. And in this case, we're talking about like mainframes.
Yeah.
That universities had. I was fortunate to go to a 2-week summer computer camp where they taught very simple, basic programming language and let us do very basic things on a mainframe, but I really loved it. So all through late childhood, middle school, high school, I was using computers in one form or another. I talked my parents into getting us a Commodore 64, and then I got a Intel desktop. And then through college as well, when I graduated college, needed a job and was able to get hired by a technology department at the university where I had gotten my degree, Case Western Reserve University. My then fiance was taking extra time to get her degree, so I didn't want to move away, so I got a job with a university while she was finishing up her degree. And it was a library information tech department.
Yeah.
And I was hired in 1992. And then in 1993, one of my coworkers there, who's actually was a college friend, is still a friend, said, "There's this World Wide Web thing that seems pretty cool." And we all said, okay, whatever. But then at some point, he actually said, I really think you should come see this. And he showed me Mosaic, like 0.8 beta or something like that on his computer, and how you could like click from page to page. And there were images and pages so that you could have a picture of the cover of a book in the listing for that book on the library card catalog. And I was just captivated. I was familiar with the concept of hypertext, but I had never actually seen it done in that way. And it was just, I was captivated. So I became the webmaster for the university over time and started going to conferences and stuff and just really got stuck in and never left. So that the history degree is sort of one of those, you know, I got my liberal arts degree because I really love liberal arts, but tech is what I turned out to be good at. And if the web hadn't come along, I was actually pursuing a master's in English.
Oh, wow.
So I was thinking at some point that I would get the master's and maybe go on to a doctorate or other advanced degree and maybe teach English or history or some combination thereof. But the web came and sidetracked me. Still haven't gotten back to that. So still doing web. So that's how. I mean, in fairness, I still try to bring those history instincts in. So having experienced most of the history of the web, I like to bring that in when I'm talking about things. So, you know, if someone says, oh, wow, this new capability is really cool, you know, why haven't we had this before? Sometimes I'll say, well, we did in the sense that we hacked our way into it, right? So like box sizing as a CSS property. We had hacks to get that sort of ability over time. But eventually it just became a simple property that people use a lot. Yeah. So, you know, or you know, people will say, wow, CSS Grid, you know, it's so awesome that it was, you know, it first came to Chrome and Firefox, and I can say actually it first came to Microsoft Edge before they were a Chromium browser. They were the first to do a CSS Grid implementation in 2012, whereas the other browsers didn't get their implementations until 5 years later. And also, for that matter, when people say, why is the indentation of lists the distance that it is? You know, if you open up the dev tools, if you open up Web Inspector and you look at list indentation in the browsers, it's 40 pixels. That is the distance, 40 px. It's not ems, it's not any font-based thing. It's exactly 40 pixels because that's what Mosaic did. That was the exact value that Mosaic used, and that the space around the content of a page, if you haven't changed the body borders, is 8 pixels again because that's what Mosaic did. So, you know, it turns out that history is actually quite relevant sometimes in web tech because, you know, you go back and you find out, well, it's because somebody made this decision in a lab or a startup or whatever in the late 1900s or the early 2000s, and that's still there. That's still what we do. And once you understand that, you can see where some of those decisions came from, then you know why and how to change things, right? If you want to change the indentation of lists or block quotes, they have the same 40 pixel side indentation. You know, knowing why it's 40 pixels gives you some ideas to, you know, okay, it's because in the late, you know, actually in the early 1990s, somebody decided 40 pixels because it looked good on their monitor. Yeah. So, you know, it's okay for me to just completely replace it with whatever because it's not rooted in some operating system thing.
Yeah, true.
Anyway.
True. That actually does make sense. First of all, I love the fact that even though you feel, even though you feel you've been sidetracked from the English studies, at the end of the day, you still do languages, so that's fine.
Yeah, still do languages. Still try to figure out the grammar of them, as it were.
Exactly, exactly. And I really love what you said about the why, because as a person, that's something that really gets me going. I could do a million things or nothing, and what really makes me decide what to do is the why. Why am I doing this? Does it really make sense beyond just doing it because everyone is doing it? So yeah, that really resonates with me. That really does. And I mean, we've already started, talking about the CSS specifications already, right? And I was just thinking, there's this book on which is written. We read the specifications, so you don't have to. I don't know if that sounds familiar.